Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Bible Said What? If you are new here, The Bible Said What is an audio series where I deconstruct Bible verses and stories that shaped and confused at least 2 decades of my life before I began my deconstruction process in 2023. Today, we are looking at the infamous words spoken by Jesus in Matthew 5. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. At first glance, this instruction sounds noble, selfless even. But here is the problem. This phrase has been used to guilt many Christians into tolerating all kinds of harmful behavior, from abusive relationships to systemic oppression and even workplace mistreatment. Was Jesus promoting pacifism, or has this verse been misused to keep people trapped in cycles of harm? Let's dig in. To be fair to Jesus, yes, I said fair to Jesus, this was spoken during the Sermon on the Mount. It's part of a series of teachings about radical love and nonviolence. Back in ancient times, slapping someone on the right cheek wasn't just an act of violence, it was an insult, a power play. By saying, turn the other cheek, Jesus was offering a subversive response. Don't hit the person back, but don't cower either. It was a way to assert dignity without escalating violence. I don't think Jesus was encouraging his followers and listeners to take multiple slaps to the face and not stand up for themselves. It is possible to not return violence with violence, but in our modern society, you do have the free will to defend yourself when someone attacks you with the intention to cause harm. Filing a police report against a violent person is a form of self-protection and self-preservation. Learning basic self-defense is a form of self-protection. Turning the other cheek or staying with a violent person does not make you a better Christian. It makes you a target and a victim. In many churches, turn the other cheek has morphed into a command for endless patience, no matter the situation. Harmful co-worker, turn the other cheek. Abusive partner, turn the other cheek and stay in the relationship. Toxic church leader, you guessed it, turn the other cheek, don't report it, don't call out the behavior, don't be a troublemaker, just shh and turn the other cheek. Pastors often frame that phrase as Christ-like humility, but let's call it for what it is. It's a dangerous oversimplification. Some victims internalize turn the other cheek as a divine mandate to accept mistreatment, believing that confrontation or setting boundaries would make them less faithful. I feel like confrontation has negative connotations. There is nothing wrong with confronting bad behavior. There is nothing wrong with confronting someone who is harming you actively or making your life a living hell. There is nothing wrong with setting boundaries as a Christian. Even Jesus set boundaries whenever he went away from his disciples to pray and speak to his Father. There were many times where Jesus didn't show up where people expected him to show up. Why? Because he was either praying or taking time for himself. Jesus was not available to his followers and disciples 24/7. So let's call it what it is: oversimplification and a mandate that keeps victims tied in uncomfortable, harmful, and dangerous situations many times. Not all pastors preach this way, by the way. Some modern theologians argue that turn the other cheek isn't about being passive, but about refusing to retaliate in petty disputes, which I 100% support, by the way. Sometimes turning the other cheek looks like you walking away, looks like you respectfully or disrespectfully terminating a toxic relationship. It looks like you firmly stating that you don't want to get involved in another person's BS or drama. And sometimes it looks like you reporting that toxic co-worker or fellow churchgoer whose life is literally dependent on causing chaos and drama in other people's lives. But back to our well-meaning Bible teachers and scholars. Many of them often stop short of saying, hey, if someone is harming you, you need to get the hell out of there. There's this tendency to tiptoe around the idea of confrontation as though Jesus wouldn't approve. But here's the gag. There are examples in the Bible where Jesus confronts wrongdoing directly, overturning the tables in the temple, calling out hypocritical leaders, and even rebuking Peter. Big J wasn't moving like your conflict avoidant ex. But I can't help but wonder why Christians feel obligated to tolerate harm in the name of Jesus, or why they pressure other Christians to stay in harmful situations because Jesus said, turn the other cheek. Let's get personal. A few years ago, many of my former pastors pressured me to reconcile with a violent and abusive family member. They were boomers, of course, nobody is surprised. And they had all the gory details. They had all the details. But they insisted that reconciling was the righteous thing to do, and I wasn't being a good enough Christian by keeping my safe distance, even though keeping my distance was the thing that protected me and helped me get back on my feet emotionally and mentally. One of them even told me not to call out the behavior, but to show the person love. Do you know how harmful it is to tell a DV survivor to love their abuser? Do you know how dangerous it is to send the survivor of abuse back to the system, back into the system that harmed them for many years? Their numbers are all blocked, by the way, and they will never gain access to me because not every day forgive and forget. Sometimes you have to remember and resent. Now, jokes aside, the reason I share this example is to show you how easy it is for spiritual leaders to see beyond the pain that somebody is experiencing and only throw a Bible verse at them. When Jesus said turn the other cheek, he did not mean that we should stay in situations that hurt us. He meant do not retaliate, do not pay them in kind. But that does not mean that if somebody pulls a pew-pew out on you or tries to harm you, that you should not defend yourself simply because you are a Christian. That is how a lot of people end up unalived and hurt very badly. This is a larger issue with taking everything you read in the Bible literally. When we treat ancient teachings and religious texts as timeless and universal, we lose the nuance. We ignore context, culture, and the fact that some verses were not written to be applied in every situation. Some situations require logic and nuanced thinking. Others require you to look at patterns or search for facts or look into other sources. Turn the other cheek worked as a form of resistance in a specific time and place. But in modern contexts, it can perpetuate harm. And if the Christian God is as loving and as just as the Bible claims, would he really want his children to be in harmful situations where they cannot protect themselves and the only thing they can do is literally turn the other cheek? Let me close out with this. Boundaries are biblical. Boundaries save your life, trust me. Self-preservation is biblical, and calling out harmful behavior, definitely biblical. If you have ever felt trapped by turn the other cheek, know this: you are allowed to stand up for yourself. As an adult, you have the free will to confront a harmful person in your life. You have the choice, the responsibility to demand accountability from the people in your life. And maybe you should question anyone or any teaching that tells you otherwise. That's it for today's episode. Thank you for listening. And as always, keep questioning.